Good morning and welcome to the KOOTH PLC investor presentation. Throughout the recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time by the Q&A tab situated in the right-hand corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company can review all the questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll, and I'd now like to hand you over to Tim Barker, CEO. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Over the next 30-45 minutes, we're going to walk you through the key highlights from last year, which was a transformational year for KOOTH as we expanded on the footprint and established our business we have in the UK into the US. So as you just heard, submit questions as we go through. We'll cover those off at the end of the presentation. Perhaps just to set the scene as a reminder, between mental health and the environmental crisis, these really are the two biggest challenges of the modern era. Over the last decade, we've seen a double-digit year-on-year growth in demand for people seeking mental health support, no more so than young people under 25s. Demand is outstripping the support available. In the UK, latest data shows that 950,000 under 25s sought help from the NHS in the last NHS year. That's 1 in 12 of the whole population. In the US, CDC does a study every 2 years. In their most recent study, 1 in 5 youth had seriously considered suicide in the previous year. And we're seeing both a recognition of this and funding going in to tackle this challenge. In the US, over $7 billion in state and federal funding, and in the UK, over the last 5 years, over £2.3 billion. Our job at KOOTH is to help scale up innovative, transformative digital services that can help tackle this challenge. And the way that we approach this is to tackle problems early. We were founded over 20 years ago, in 2001. This week is the anniversary, the 20th anniversary of our first go live back in Stockport in Greater Manchester 2 decades ago. So we've been on a diligent, thoughtful journey for over 2 decades, really focused on these 3 key areas. Firstly, we're going to provide support for people. We need to remove barriers to access. We need to help destigmatize seeking help. And because it's not always the case that if you build it and they will come, you need to engage with communities. You need to become embedded within communities to support those who are seeking help before they go to a healthcare system, so we can reach them early. Secondly, you need to do this in a person-centric way. We are not a service that diagnoses and prescribes. We are a service that provides support for individuals on their own terms. So there is no one-size-fits-all. We offer a range of different support options. Not only just providing support, but helping young people build skills for life. And finally, to achieve this, you need to have a view of doing this as a population health service, supporting everyone in the community. So we are a digital front door, not only to providing support directly, but into other services that are available. So we connect individuals in need into other services that are available through the healthcare system. We provide to our customers incredible insights as to what's happening, what their mental health of their population is, so they can create a responsive, data-driven strategy for how they can support their population better. And increasingly, a North Star for us are our health economic outcomes, which in other words is about demonstrating the great value for money that we provide. In the UK today, £1 spent on KOOTH saves public services £3.40 in short-term cost savings. In the US, our initial projections are that it could be up to 12 to 1 in terms of cost savings. So we're on a journey to really help tackle this, and have been on that journey for over 2 decades. What that means is for an individual seeking support, they may hear about KOOTH in school or from a healthcare professional, or just from a friend or online. They don't need to get a referral code from a doctor to get support. They can sign up themselves. And in doing so, they can access on their own terms what support they want. They can access helpful content. So let's imagine an individual 16-year-old worried about exam anxiety, something that a lot of kids are going through right now. So they could go on to KOOTH, they could learn about anxiety. Is it normal? They could understand themselves better. They could go and access tools and activities, box breathing activities to help them manage their anxiety in the moment. They might want to seek support from others that have been through similar challenges in the past. So they can post on a peer support community. Every single piece of content that's posted there is rigorously reviewed by our moderation and safety team. We have over 500,000 posts and pieces of content submitted by users every year. And so that individual, 16-year-old, may get support from a 17-year-old that's walked in their shoes and give them some advice. Also, with one click, they can access professional support. And in doing so, they will engage with one of our professional members of our practitioner team. All of our practitioners are employed by us, they are trained, supervised by us, and uniquely in the industry, we audit every single practitioner at least once a quarter. That means the full transcripts of every engagement and activity they've had are reviewed by our clinical governance teams to ensure that we're delivering good practice. What's interesting is when you freely open up that service and those options to different users, where do they go? So there are no thresholds or limits. We're simply providing support that people are seeking or that we might be recommended to them based on their needs. So 60% of individuals get the support they want and need through the community and the content. Of those seeking professional support, 35% we might see infrequently, once perhaps if they just need some advice, or infrequently perhaps as they may need support in the moment. And then around 5% of individuals we would then support in what's called structured counselling, which is more familiar to anyone who's undergone sort of talking therapies. That may be 12 sessions that we might see you over several months, and we'll work with you by setting some goals to achieve some positive outcomes and improvement in your life. Obviously, that top of the pyramid is the more intensive support that we provide through our service. And so the key thing here is to be a population health service. We can scale up, and 95% of people get the support they want and need with that more costly option of structured counselling. Now, that is great for those individuals. They get what they need early and they get the support they need. It's also great for the healthcare system because we are supporting people early and reducing the total demand for this more intensive support.
Thanks, Tim. So just taking a quick look at our business model and how that works, we are completely free at the point of use for the end user. So we'll contract with our client, which is generally a public healthcare system or local authority or a state government. And when we're initially agreeing a first year fee, the fee will be based on what we expect usage of the service to be in that particular region. We have around 25 million data points, so we can quite accurately model whether a rural area versus an urban area or an area perhaps with a higher ethnic minority population will have different levels of usage. And once we've agreed that fee for the first 12 months, based on perhaps 1 in 40 of that population using the service, we will then really try and look for, we want more and more people to be using the service across a particular region, so our engagement with them is incredibly important. And we do that in 2 ways. We have engagement staff who are employed across the UK as well as in the US. And these are our feet on the streets. They're all professionals. They've worked with children previously or young people, typically, ex-teachers maybe. And they will visit schools. They'll be talking at assembly, explaining the KOOTH service to young people, perhaps running some workshops as well within the schools. And other areas where young people might also congregate or hang out, like community centres or youth clubs. And the work they'll be doing in a region will be supplemented by some specifically targeted social media campaigns. And the ambition is really to get more and more people aware of the service so that they're able to access and use it as and when they need to. We know that across the country there's a need of perhaps 1 in 5 1 in 6 at any point in the year of a population requiring mental health support. And in some areas, we are, already reaching 1 in 10 of that population. So as we get towards the end of our initial pilot contract, and the pilot contract is charged, it's a fixed fee, it's charged on a monthly basis, typically monthly in advance, and that gives the client certainty around how much they're going to be paying. We will start to look at the usage of the service towards the end of the contract, and let's say we now have 1 in 25 of the population using the service. That gives us a great opportunity to put more resource into the service and agree perhaps a higher fee to cover the cost of that resource. We're also able to typically expand a contract through the age groups that we cover. So we might initially cover 11 to 18-year-olds, and then depending on the success of the service, we can add 19 to 25-year-olds to the service. And in some cases, we'll also add adults in a particular population, giving us what we call a whole population contract. A great example of this is on the next slide. Thanks, Tim. Where, as Tim mentioned, we started in Stockport nearly 20 years ago. That was our first contract. This is Greater Manchester we're looking at. Other regions started to hear, around Stockport started to hear about service. We started to add other regions to the contract, as well as increasing the age groups there. And in 2022, we added adults across Greater Manchester to the contract as well. So we now look after more than 2 million people across Greater Manchester. The ARR there is around £2 million. So that's for £1 per person per year. That is professional support is available to all the population of Manchester.
So as Sanjay mentioned there, we have a service for adults, Manchester being a key area where that service is available. Where KOOTH really got started and where it's best known for is the support we provide for 10 to 25-year-olds. So in the UK, around 60% of the population of that age group has access to the service. And of course, we're now expanding into the US, primarily working with state government and insurers and Medicaid providers, and we'll talk more about that later on. Looking over the horizon, we see an opportunity to license our technology to healthcare operators in other countries so that they can staff up the service with their own workforce and deliver it under their own brand. That's beyond our plan and goals for this year, but we'd expect over the next 18 months to 2 years to really start to see some activity there. Just to touch on the headlines, we're going to talk more about all of these after we've gone through the financial highlights. But obviously the key highlights from last year were around the successful launch of our new contract with California, the deployment of a new product, which we'll talk more about, called Saluna. We announced a few weeks ago our first partnership with a Medicaid care provider, Aetna. And we'll talk more about our progress in terms of uptake and contractual progress in Pennsylvania. We raised capital last July to enable us to continue to grow and expand the service to support the ever-growing demand and need that there is. And we'll give you some colour on the progress we're making in the US, expanding into additional states with our commercial team. Finally, as a UK-founded service, we'll come back and give you some colour on the UK landscape and the outlook for the year.
Thanks, Tim. So taking a look at the financial highlights for 2023, as Tim indicated, a transformational year for us. We grew organically by a record 66% in terms of revenues. Most of that revenue growth was driven by our US contracts, but we did manage to also grow UK revenue by around 3% last year. The UK will be probably flatter this year, and we'll give you a bit more colour on that in the outlook in a few minutes' time. We finished the year with 65 million, just under 65 million of ARR, and we've been a little bit cautious around that number. So that doesn't, for example, include Pennsylvania, where we're still sort of discussing the contracts. And it does, however, give us great visibility into 2024 and thereafter. And so in terms of our expectations for 2024, with 3 months of the year gone, we're confident that we'll hit market expectations for revenue as well as EBITDA. EBITDA we expect to have a margin of mid-teens this year, And we'd be disappointed if our margins for EBITDA didn't start to get closer to around 20% in the medium term. Gross margin was up by nearly 9 percentage points to 77.6%. If I was to break that out, that's approximately 68% in the UK, 80% in the US. But the US is a little bit flattered at the moment because we have a contribution to product development revenues coming into the revenue line. And product development work is typically research and development. So, for example, we did a lot of work last year working with young people across California to determine what they would like to see in the Soluna platform. Those costs go through the operating expenses line, or the product development revenues are the costs associated with are capitalized as part of the overall platform. So the 80% I mentioned for the US on a more normalized basis, we'd expect group margins to be between 70 and 75%. And of course, our direct costs are predominantly the costs of our practitioners and the clinical support staff supporting them. Finally, just looking at the balance sheet very quickly, we had £11 million of cash on the balance sheet at the end of last year, which gives us confidence that we will not need to raise any further cash. We have sufficient to invest in the business. We also have a working capital facility with Citibank of just under $10 million, although we don't expect at this point in time to have to draw down on that. Some of you will recall that we did a fundraise in July of last year, raising £10 million gross. And those funds, whilst the California contract is very much sort of self-funding, those funds were raised for two reasons. One, to accelerate our ability to expand across the US and invest in business development efforts. And part of those proceeds were earmarked for the engineering efforts to bring the Soluna platform back to our UK customers and clients at the end of this year, early next year. And that, we think, will also help kickstart UK growth once an election is over. And we'd be confident of getting back to double-digit growth in the UK thereafter.
So perhaps coming on, just talk a little bit more about the progress we've made across those 6 areas I spoke about earlier, perhaps starting with California. With over almost 12 months, we were working with California in a process that they ran to identify providers that they could work with to help roll out a service across the state to reach 6 million 30 to 25-year-olds. As part of the process, we were successful in being awarded a contract over 4 years. And a key milestone for us last year was to get ready for go live. So in terms of the evaluation of KOOTH, they evaluated as California Department of Healthcare Services, evaluated us and identified that we met out of the gate probably about 70% of the requirements. And so last year we had a big focus on building out our technology, getting ready for go live, and then also building out our team. So you can see some of the milestones we achieved here in terms of delivering on contractual deliverables, which were achieving quality certificates for ISO 27001 and SOC 2. In terms of building the workforce, we had over 25,000 applicants for the roles. We conducted over 3,000 interviews to hire around 200 staff across 26 states. And in terms of building out a next generation of our product, it's absolutely critical that the voices of young people are part of the process, are included and have a seat at the table for the kind of support and service that they want and need. And so we worked with over 200 young people in the development and design of the Soluna service, giving us feedback, ideas, and identifying what kind of support they wanted. And in doing so, really built a service that went live, initially in a pilot stage towards the end of last year, and then on January 1 across the entire state. We're really proud of the work that we've done. And we're providing support across 19 languages today to the population in California. An incredible project, but of course we're just now at the start of the next chapter of this, which is really around building awareness, driving usage, continuing to deliver value, and supporting the population. So the next generation app is called Soluna. The reason why it's called Soluna and not KOOTH is because KOOTH did not test well linguistically across all 19 languages. Soluna is a combination of the sun and the moon coming together. Soluna provides a combined integrated service that provides content, community, and coaching in a single integrated platform. It's free for users. They can download it from the App Store, and they can immediately get access to all the capabilities here if they register as a resident in California. So there's an engaging mobile app where we're providing support in English, Spanish, and telecoaching across all those 19 languages. Because we're about reaching people early, we're providing what's called preclinical coaching support across all those languages. And for individuals, again, that need more acute support, that might need a referral into an eating disorder service or a service to help them with the specialist need, then we have a directory of all of the services available in California, and we can do what's called a warm handoff to make sure that that individual gets into those other services. We are using artificial intelligence very carefully and cautiously in three areas. We use it and are using it increasingly to improve the user experience. The more that you use the app, the better it should become for you, in the same way that your Netflix account starts to learn more about what your interests are. We are in the early stages of using it to support our practitioners to help improve their productivity. So something that we're working on is the idea of summarizing case notes to make consistency and productivity available to our practitioners so that they can spend more time supporting individuals and less time on administrative activities. And we use AI to detect individuals who might be at risk so we can reach out to them. For example, if an individual posts in their daily journal that they are feeling about suicidal ideation, we will then flag that content and then connect to that individual, ask them to join us in a one-to-one session. Of course, now that we're live, we've been asked what is the uptake and usage like? Well, our customer, the Department of Healthcare Services in California, will be leading the charge there. We expect they're going to be providing quarterly updates on progress and usage. I couldn't tell you the date at which they'll come out, but I'd expect within this quarter or next we'll start to see that. But we're really pleased with the fast start that we've got, the work that we've done, and the journey that we're on to reach every 13 to 25-year-old in the state, provide them with much needed support. Just to touch briefly on some of the work that underpins the work that we've done with Soluna, as well as providing support to individuals directly, we want to support them on a journey to develop their psychological flexibility, which probably in layman's terms we'd all understand as resilience. And so by having a service where people feel they've got autonomy, where they're free to choose their own path, where the service is relatable to them, that it's culturally relevant to them, but through the support, through the coaching that we've got, we can help them through a journey of mastery and self-efficacy, ultimately to help build their psychological flexibility for the future. Moving on from California, we announced a few weeks ago a really exciting partnership that we're doing with Aetna. Aetna is part of CVS Health. They are one of the largest healthcare providers in the US, a $95 billion market cap, and they run Medicaid managed care services across 16 states. As you may be familiar, Medicaid is the largest single health insurance program across the US, providing support for low-income families. And when you look at youth, around $30 billion a year is already being spent on behavioral health care for children and young adults. In fact, over 29 million under 18s are covered by Medicaid. This is a much needed service for a low-income group. And so working with Aetna, what we aim to achieve is by deploying initially in Chicago, support a small population. And as we prove out the service, obviously the opportunity to expand further into Illinois and then into additional states. And really our objective here, as we've done for many years, which is by providing this upstream support, we aim to reduce the demand for acute mental health interventions downstream. That's great for individuals, supporting them early, creating less distress in the population, and also saving the healthcare system for more expensive downstream costs. Our objective here is by working in partnership with Aetna, we build service within Chicago and Illinois and within Aetna, and then also a blueprint for how we could expand into other states. You may be familiar that our very first contract in the US was with the state of Pennsylvania, which we rolled out our first services in around October 2022. This just gives you a snapshot of the progress that we made and probably a testament to the level of demand that there is within this population. So working through school districts, we were able to reach around, provide our service to around 100,000 individuals. And what we saw is around 1 in 10 of that population using KOOTH in its first year. When we compare that with the uptake that we see on average in the UK of 1 in 40, an incredibly high level of usage in the first year. And we think a real testament to the need that there is to grow access to mental health support across such a large population. 88% of students self-reported that they got the support that they need. And in addition to the support that we saw from students, we also saw support from school districts who view that we can help expand the support options for their students. We're also very grateful for the support from the Mayor of Philadelphia, who mentioned us in a speech they gave a few weeks ago. So in terms of where we are with Pennsylvania, we are disappointed that we couldn't bring more positive news to you for today's presentation, but we are still hard at work in Pennsylvania, working in the state capital to really help secure future funding for this. One reason why this has been delayed is the state budget for healthcare and education was delayed about 5 months and wasn't signed off till mid-December. And looking at an election year, there's more conversations to be had with every party around what they see as the future and the support needed to support the population. So when we have additional news, we'll come back to market with an update. Outside of that, as I mentioned earlier, we did a capital raise to support us expanding a commercial organisation, enable us to engage with more states and support more individuals. So since then, we did an analysis of remaining 48 states to identify key ones where we should focus our energy. We've hired lobbyists to support us in those efforts to raise awareness and build support. And we've got a commercial team that's busy and a clinical team that's busy engaging with representatives across states, really demonstrate the efficacy of what we do and build a foundation by which we can deploy our service and then expand it over time. In addition to that, although we have a decade's worth of research and academic evidence, we feel it's important to also work with local US academic partners there. So we are starting a number of academic research and partnerships where they can demonstrate the efficacy, both the economic outcomes and the therapeutic ones of our service in the US. Finally, bringing it back to the UK, those of you that are in the UK will know that the NHS is going through a time of pressure right now. There is pressure on funding. So the NHS started its year in England with an estimated £7 billion budget deficit. Industrial Action added another £1 billion in costs. And the NHS has been given the instruction to balance their budget this year. In addition, obviously, there's urgency to tackle those elective care waiting lists for people awaiting surgery, and I think some uncertainty around an upcoming UK election. The net of that is that we've seen new business in the UK, particularly in England, slow down. And when we look at our existing business, we see that churn ticked up from 2 million to 2.3 million last year. A positive that we managed to expand 41% of contracts that came up for renewal, either through an inflation or a utilization expansion. And the way that we measure net revenue retention is really looking at the number of contracts we have at the start of the year and the expansion of those at the end of the year. The first time that trips below 100%, and perhaps one key reason for that is in the prior year, in 2022, We won a number of new contracts to support adult populations. In their first year, while they achieved good outcomes, did not get deeply established enough for commissioners who, under financial pressure, had to make tough decisions. So in those 7 cases, we saw funding go into other initiatives, and regrettably, those contracts end. Our focus now is to focus on our customers, our existing renewals and retention, to continue to demonstrate the impact of what we do, and also to ensure that the work that we do is heard broadly at a national level, not just at a regional level, so working with policy and public affairs teams. We launched a new service last year called IDP, which also supports our commissioners at these tough times by plugging in to their waiting lists so they can support individuals that may be waiting some considerable time for mental health support. So we can potentially support individuals who might be lower acuity or might want to opt in to get support from our service, so we can hopefully support them and remove them from the waiting list. We also, over our plans over the next year, plan to bring all these innovations that we've spoken about with Saluna back to the UK. It will be branded as KOOTH in the UK, given the brand equity that there is built here. And we think that will create a more engaging and also effective service based on all the innovations that we've developed. We can't foresee the future, but we do anticipate that post-election, as the NHS priorities and funding solidifies, there will be back to double-digit growth. So finally, in terms of our summary and outlook, look, we've been really busy over the last year, really delivering and focusing on our strategy to expand in the US, both through California, the work we've done in Pennsylvania, and then additional states. We've also expanded, as we mentioned, about to support individuals that qualify for Medicaid, so low-income families and youth. And so that partnership there in Better Health, we think that will be an incredibly much needed additional support option for those individuals. And in the UK, focus on renewals, retention, given the tough financial pressures that the NHS is under.
And so finally, just taking a look at the outlook for 2024, as we indicated, 23 was a transformational year for us. We expect that to continue into 24. We've talked about ARR coming into the year of nearly 65 million, so that gives us a strong underpinning for the year, gives us confidence that we'll make the numbers that the market expects us to make in terms of both revenue and EBITDA margins. And we'll start generating positive cash flow towards the end of this year in terms of free cash flow. And one thing I'm particularly excited about is being able to bring the Saluna platform back to the UK. It's a really engaging platform. We think it'll give us some operational leverage because young people in particular will get a lot more of the support they need from perhaps the platform rather than the requirement for professional support. So we're very excited about the upcoming year.
Great, that concludes the presentation. We'll hand it back now and then we'll go into Q&A.
Perfect. Tim, Sanjay, thank you very much for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab, which is situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the company take a few moments to review the questions that have been submitted today, I'd like to remind you that the recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. As you can see, we have received a number of questions throughout today's presentation. And Tim, Sanjay, if I could just hand back to you to read out the questions and give responses where it's appropriate to do so, I'll pick up from you both at the end.
Certainly. So the first question submitted from Colin. Thank you, Colin. What's your strategic priorities in the coming year in terms of consolidating your current market position and exploring new growth opportunities? So I think probably to reference the outlook slide, some key objectives that we've got this year. Firstly, California is a large opportunity, a large contract for us. We're committed to ensuring that we deliver on the uptake, on the usage that goes with that, so we can demonstrate the impact that we can have across the population. So driving awareness, uptake, and impact is key there. Across that in the US, as we've mentioned, we're now working in a new Medicaid environment. We want to demonstrate the impact that we can have there. as well as taking all these innovations into additional states, tackle the ever-growing crisis that there is in youth mental health. In the UK, we want to bring, in the next year, all these innovations of Soluna back to the UK. I might summarize it as saying that what we've done is look at some of we went back to basics to look at some of the capabilities that we have. So, for example, in KOOTH today, if you want to read about exam anxiety, there'll be a blog post for that. If you go to Soluna, there'll be a video for that. There'll be interactive activities you can do. So we've really tried to build something that really is engaging for Gen Z, building on everything we've learned there. So a big program of work this year is to bring Soluna to the UK, and in doing so, not simply just view it as a technology project, but then work with our NHS commissioners, work with young people in the UK to make sure that what we're delivering is culturally relevant to them, supporting their most urgent needs, and increasingly looking at how we can best integrate with other NHS services. So those are the probably key things that we'll be focused on this year. And look, analyst forecasts are that we'll more than double the revenues this year. That's really focused on fundamentals. If we just continue on executing things that are currently already contracted with us, that's the direction of travel that we'll be going in. David's asking questions. Do you see expansion into other geographies as viable at this stage? Great question, David. I think there's only so many strategies that we can really get off the ground at any one time. Obviously, the US is an entirely new market. We entered in late 2021, and we think probably one key reason why we're excited for the longer term on other international markets is we receive every month inbound from healthcare systems looking for advice or support or technology or services that can help them deal with the growing demands of mental health support in their country. Our approach to this is that we cannot really scale headcount and be everywhere. So our thinking is that we'll license our technology, healthcare operators in their country, marketed under their brand. And in doing so, we can deliver technology. Obviously, as a software as a service product, it is a higher margin service and enable us to then take all of our learnings and scale that up to truly be a global solution. But word of caution, we can only move it so fast in so many initiatives. So we probably would look to that to be somewhere over the next 18 to 24 months before you'll start to see visible progress there.
This question here is for me, I think. Hi, will you consider a dual listing or relisting KOOTH on the New York Stock Exchange, given this is where the growth of the business will be derived from? It's a good question, and absolutely, the US has been a real driver of growth, but the UK is our home market, and we're very much focused on executing our strategy, and we think that's going to drive the growth of the business going forwards. Listing or relisting in the US is probably a complication for us that we don't really, we're not really looking for the moment. I think Tim and I are very focused on, we're very hands-on within the business, as well as, of course, dealing with the investor relations side of the business. So probably not on the agenda at the moment. We do have, some US investors on the share register. We're starting to see more interest given the work that we're doing in the US. But watch this space.
Question here asking about concern about anti-KOOTH discussion, particularly from Pennsylvania. While some of this is attributable to poor understanding, how's the company managing this negativity and what can be done to overcome it? Is it detracting from further state discussions? So, look, a really good question and something I think I want to give a full answer to. So, look, a key principle for every organization is to operate on a foundation of trust. We've spent 20 years building our service and the trust within it. The trust of our service, our safeguarding, our outcomes, providing a welcoming service to the population, for those seeking support. In addition to doing that, we've got 50 peer-reviewed research papers that we've developed over a decade, and we're always looking to seek independent audit and assessments of the quality of that service, whether that be from organisations like BACP, the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapy, emerging standards like the NHS DTAC standard, ISO 27001 and SOC 2 and others. You're right there in the question to point to that there are detractors in Pennsylvania that are looking to undermine this trust. And whether that's because they don't trust our intentions or motivations, or that as a state-funded initiative they don't trust the government, or both, I couldn't answer for them. But there are misunderstandings that are being presented, and they tend to fall into three broad categories. The first one being parental rights being undermined. The view is that parents should be involved and informed at every step of their journey, for those teenagers seeking mental health support or substance abuse support. However, young people aged 14 have the autonomy and the right and the freedom, as legislated by the state, to seek support directly, whether that's through KOOTH or through any other service that's available to them. That's a state law, and it's a right that we can't take away from young people. We will, however, as always, through our service, parents are an important, critical part of the mental health journey that young people go on. So if they can open up to their parents with what they're going through, we'll always recommend they should. Because your parents are supporters and champions of their children. The second claim is that we have some pro-LGBT activist agenda. That's just untrue. As a population-wide health service, we support everyone, including those in marginalised and underserved communities. But let's take a delicate topic around something like gender identity. We do not promote, diagnose, or discuss treatments. What we will do is offer psychological support for individuals who may be struggling with anxiety or depression because of how they feel. And the most important thing we want to do, keep them safe. And thirdly, there's misinformation, misunderstandings about overall safeguarding of our service, whether that be the credentials of our professionals or our content moderation process. To address these concerns, up to now, we've really focused on addressing any concerns directly to stakeholders, whether that be the state, that be to schools, or other healthcare professionals. But as we know, trust, really a foundation of trust is also transparency. And reflecting on it, we can be more proactive here. So what we're doing over the next few weeks is launching a transparency centre that goes into the detail of every aspect of our service, our clinical governance, our processes, and we moderate to help address any misunderstandings. We also recognise the responsibility that we have in this emerging field of digital mental health care to help set new standards by which others can hold us accountable and also audit. So we are working and have this long-term view for how we can help set and measure standards in this area. For example, we audit every single practitioner regularly based on the chat transcripts that are available. Traditional face-to-face services don't do this. They can't do it. They don't have the full transcript of everything that happened. But for us, that's a new opportunity to help set a new standard in how to do governance and audit and set a new bar for what good looks like. So those are the proactive actions we're taking. We recognise that transparency is a key part, really, for building and maintaining trust. So the second part of the question of how it's impacting additional conversations, look, I'm going to answer with humility, not hubris here. We take nothing for granted, like we don't in the UK, and we earn the right with every customer to support their population. It's no different today than it's been previously in the last 20 years. And our job here is to address the growing mental health crisis that we're here to address. So in terms of other states, our commercial team's busy, but I'm not going to sit with hubris to say we take anything for granted. We've got to make sure that we, with every state, just like every region in the UK, demonstrate the great efficacy of what we do, the great efficiencies of it, and the economic outcomes.
Finally, Tim, I think we've got a couple of questions about international growth. Peter has asked, have you considered looking at European countries? As Tim indicated, we are really focused on looking after our existing clients in the UK and the US at the moment. But one of the great things about our learnings in California is that we are delivering that service in 19 languages. English and Spanish being the key languages, but of course covering the other official state languages as well. And that does give us a calling card into thinking about the rest of the world. One of the things about being a public company, as well as, of course, the transparency it gives to our customers, as well as our investors, staff, etc., is that we get a reasonable amount of inbound inquiries. Probably once a month we get an inbound from another country or another state that is interested in KOOTH being available in their particular region. Now, if we were to look at that, it's one of our 4 pillars of growth. That would probably take the form of a licensing of our technology type agreement, rather than standing up a full service. But I'd say we're probably at least 18 months away from that starting to be something that we would spend a considerable amount of time looking at.
Great. And just to look at another question that's come in from Jeremy. Do you have an advanced pipeline of new states for the US with contracts that could sign in 2024, or is it too early days? So last year we did, as I mentioned earlier, we did an analysis to look at all across 48 states. Our commercial team is busy and working with those. I'd be disappointed if we don't expand into 1 or 2 additional states this year for certain. So there is a lot of work to be done, but yeah, I'm feeling optimistic that we'll be expanding this year. Great, so just looking through those questions, I think we've answered the kind of key themes that have come out from today. Really appreciate you joining, and I'll hand it back now.
Perfect, Tim, Sanjay. Thank you very much for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of KOOTH PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good morning to you all.
Thank you.